All right, so this is statistics, and we are coming back to the different levels of measurement. We were talking about ordinal, which if you were to stop and think about it, it doesn't make sense to talk about subtracting a C from an A. We won't know whether or not we have, you know, nearly 30 points in between, or whether we're going to have, you know, slightly more than 10. So this is a case where the values in between don't make any sense. They're nonsensical. Okay? Interval, you actually have set values, but you wind up not having some kind of absolute zero, right? So in the case of, say, the temperature outside, you have a high and you have a low, you know, the warmest it gets during the day and the coolest it gets during the day. And so that is an actual interval. Now, you can have that same interval happen at 10 degrees warmer, right? And that interval is still going to be the same. That's the same distance between those two values. What happens, though, is we don't have a zero, not because zero doesn't exist on the thermometer, but because we do not have a case of absolute value or absolute zero, or I believe it's in kelvins. So we don't have zero in Kelvin. And what that means is that there's still some warmth even when we say zero. And it's interesting because if you think about it, Celsius has zero at the point where water freezes, where Fahrenheit, that's 32. So obviously these are, I mean, if you were to switch from one to the other, they're not going to give you the same value. So there is no zero involved in that, if that makes, hopefully that will make sense. In the ratio, you have an exact zero. You have some other, other values that can be made, and they can be, they make sense in the in-between times, and we can calculate an exact value. So for instance, let's say you decide you're going to do your homework, and you log on, you say, nope, it's Friday, I'm going to take my day off, I'm going to wait until Sunday to do my homework. You log back off after 3 seconds. Okay? That is, you've logged in. You could have, logged in and logged right back out again, so you would have had a zero. There could have been zero time, or somebody who doesn't start their assignment would be zero time. You can measure it. We can say 3 seconds versus 5 hours. And the time in between makes sense. I mean, we can talk about, okay, this person took 30 minutes to do their homework, and this other person took 2 hours to do their homework. And in that, we have this kind of the difference between our interval and our ratio. So hopefully that makes sense. If it's still not clear, you might want to go back and take a look at the book. Let me quick. The pages on that are 16, 17, and 18. And you can quick look at those, and hopefully it will help make some more sense. All right, so nominal level. This is the one where we're assigning a value, like eye color. 1 is brown, 2 is gray, 3 is green, whatever, right? So this would be a case where if you were to try to add them all together and then find the average, it is not going to make sense. All right? So the ordinal level, we talked about grades. All right? And that's when we're talking about in terms of just a letter grade. We're talking about just a letter grade. There's no percentages attached to that. The interval level. And this is a case where sometimes people are like, well, wait a minute, there was the time BC and then AC and there was a 0 in there. It's like, but that's not when time started. And that's what we mean by a natural 0. So hopefully that helps. And class time could be the ratio level of management. So you have the classes, put them in order for shortest class to longest class in the course summary, right? So you can take a look, you can measure those classes in their length, you can take a subtraction, you know what the difference is going to be between those. You also know that if you take no classes, that's 0 time going to be spent on classes, right? So it has a natural 0. All right. So this kind of gives you the bird's eye view. Again, nominal, which is the category. We're labeling something as opposed to measuring something. Then we have ordinal, interval, and ratio. And again, those are like tree rings. This is the outermost ring, the next ring in, and then ratio is the smallest ring. All right, big data. Big data is huge amounts of information that can be captured by the technology today, but there is no way that someone would be able to use that data, you know, calculating by hand or by a small, ordinary statistics program. It just isn't going to work. There's just so much. It becomes so complex that we can't do it. Can't do it by hand. We can't do it by simple statistical software. We would need to have parallel processors in place, multiple computers running, all working on the same information. Okay. Data science has to do with the application. It's that intersection I talked about. It's an intersection of statistics, computer science, software engineering, and then whatever other field you might need. Okay. I use the case of microbiology. If you have statistics, computer science, software engineering, and microbiology, you could be doing the data science of, you know, microbiology creatures, right? You could have like all the bacteria and so on. So that would be a case of the data science. You're going to have all of those pieces. It can be quite an extensive process to get there, but once you're there, there is a huge number of people who need your resources. Google would be very happy to hire you. All right, so the data science, if you go that far with this, it can become very lucrative. All right, so missing data. Data value is missing completely at random. So this is a case where it's just missing, right? You know, somebody decides it's more at the respondent's fault, right? They are like, well, I don't want to answer that question, and so they just skip over it. If you have something where people have thrown out a question and are no longer using that data, that is a data case that is it's missing data that's no longer, it is not random, right? So for missing data, you can delete all the subjects that have any of the missing values. All right, and when you do that, you generally have to disclose the reason that we have, 37 people in this question, but we have 50 subjects. That is because those people chose not to respond. Okay, we can also impute missing data. Some folks there's actually been studies done around this. When people are asked their income, and if their income is not very high, they are very reluctant to disclose that information. So what winds up happening is you could argue that you could impute a missing value for income to be less than some threshold, like $20,000 or $30,000. That's where we make that assumption, or we assign it a value. And that's it. That is our section 1.2 part 2.